Well, I know, but people when you're
It's not 6:02.
Well,
It got all dried out, but it's still starting to shoot.
there you go. One more down here.
So I told her to grab that sit in the back of the new gravel turning sound made. So she bears the gravel.
Not streaming our
So I got my truck out of the gravel driveway. Here's the flex in the car to drive. She knows all the compliance stuff through sales.
Well, you and I have to share one unless you want another one. That's fine. Yeah. It's not a small nightmare.
When they amend these to throw your photos on there for
Is it a
me.
socket that doesn't work?
No, I mean, I'm sorry, when they approve it.
Yes.
You'll
All
sign
right,
it.
we're all ready. We're all good now.
Beautiful. All right. Let us call the meeting to order. Please rise for a moment of silent reflection before we begin. And please join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Let us take roll, please.
Manel.
Here.
Shaver.
Here.
Cassidy.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Mendoza. Here. Logsdon.
Here.
Lake.
Here. Very good. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. It sounded fascinating. Sorry I couldn't be here. Any discussion, amending, motions to accept?
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Manel, second by Mr. Logsdon. Let's call the roll.
Manel.
Yes.
Shaver.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Mendoza. Yes. Logsdon.
Yes.
Lake.
Yes. Excellent. Any communications?
I have none.
Very good. Before we do the committee reports, seeing as how it is a new year, even though was not an election year for us, my plan was to keep everyone in their current assignments for committees. Anyone have any moving that they'd like to do? Everyone good? Beautiful. So moved. Or something. So Finance Committee,
All right.
welcome.
Thank you. So we don't have a report this evening, but we will have our first Finance Council meeting of the year
Okay.
before the next regularly scheduled council meeting at 5:30 p.m. I'm just not sure what date that is. It's the 17th, so the 17th at 5:30.
17th. You guys have the 5:30 slot. Very good. Public Affairs.
Thank you. We will be having our next meeting on the 17th at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. for Public Affairs. Very good. Law and Ordinance.
We'll file public affairs at 5:15.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
Great day of local government indeed. January 17th. Public Affairs at 5. Law and Ordinance at 5:15. Finance Committee at 5:30. Beautiful. It would appear the mayor and the safety service director are not here. Let's assume that there's things to do in town. Look at a calendar, find them to do. There you go. I just have the mayor's report. Madam Law Director.
Thank you. Just a couple things. First of all, real quickly, our only business that should be passed as emergency tonight is the last bit of new business, the addendum to agreement regarding sanitary sewers. So this we just missed with the addendums for the annexation stuff that we signed in December. We just missed this one. So this is just retroactively approving the mayor to sign that. It's just extending it the 3 years, just like the other cooperative agreements that we did in December. Next, I need to explain the new legislation for the charter amendments, the Director of Finance and the Director of Law, abolishing the elected positions and creating the appointed positions. So, a little bit of backstory. When we had our last Charter Review Commission, we had hired counsel for that. And at that time, we had been advised that any change to the elected positions would take effect after the expiration of those elected terms. Well, I was looking into doing some research on a completely unrelated matter, and I stumbled upon this revised code section that is referenced in the new legislation. And in reading through that, it seemed to me, my interpretation of it was that city council could pass an ordinance doing what we have here that would make those appointed positions effective immediately upon passage of those ordinances, as opposed to at the expiration of our elected terms, it would effectively abolish the office of elected director of law, elected director of finance, abolish those offices, and creating the new offices of appointed positions. So, because that was in contrast to what we had been advised previously, I contacted the Attorney General's office to get some guidance on that. And after a few phone calls, the Attorney General told me that they are not allowed to give any guidance on city charters. So they were unhelpful. They directed me to the, shocker, right? So they directed me to the county prosecutor. So I consulted with the Seneca County prosecutor, and I gave him the revised code section that I had found, and I had him read it and give me his interpretation, and he agreed with me. So both of our interpretations of this statute is that council can pass legislation making this effective immediately. The amendments that were voted on and approved by the voters of the city of Fostoria. So I crafted these ordinances, and now they are before council for their consideration. So do with them what you will.
So,
And that's all I have.
point of clarification.
Yes.
Should these ordinances pass, then the next day, those positions would be eliminated.
Correct. Yep. These offices would be vacant, and until the person is appointed to fill them.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. Any questions for the law director?
On a similar topic, what is our deadline on getting on the spring ballot the city manager issue again?
I would have to look into it to give you an exact date, but if I recall correctly, I think a deadline would be in February sometime. I'm not sure exactly. So if you guys desired to put that on the ballot, it would be fairly simple. It'd just be a matter of changing some legislation dates, because we've done this in the past. So I could get it together very quickly, but I don't know if you would have time for even 2 readings. I'm not sure. Either one or 2 readings, I'm guessing. But I will have an exact deadline for you shortly. I'll send out an email.
I can't speak for council, but for me, I think it's important that we get it on this spring. I think enough time's passed, and I don't want it to go too long to where it falls too far back in the recesses of everybody's mind. And this situation, I feel, is serious enough that if we have to go to voting on an emergency ordinance, I would favor that. But I think the time to go ahead and move forward on this is now.
I can certainly put that legislation together and put it before council for your consideration.
Fine.
I'll have it at the next meeting if you'd like.
Other questions for the law director? Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Madam Finance Director?
I don't have too much, but we started balancing December for the year today. Should have it done by the end of this week. So hopefully Cindy can look at it and close out the month or close out the year by Tuesday next week, because she's busy the rest of the week. So that's the plan. So,
I didn't even know November was ever closed out.
it was sent to you in an email. And then we did finish up with our investments for this year, with a total of $211,000 in interest this year, so that was pretty cool. So, whatever.
Question to the finance director.
Yeah, the one thing we need to keep a watch on, you sent out that report, and it looks to me as if Premier Bank is fluctuating a little bit.
Yeah, they are still staying higher though than Star Ohio. Just a hair.
Depends on which period you're looking at, because they were below for 1 or 2 periods.
Overall, for the end of the month though, it is still staying a little bit higher than Star Ohio.
Well, just keep an eye on it.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything else for the finance director?
Can I go back to the law director?
Of course.
Sure. So is there a way, I guess with the charter and those legislation that's on the table here, is there a way to, I guess, move forward with them being appointed positions without removing you or removing you from the positions at this point in time?
If you pass the legislation.
As written, right?
As written, we will be effectively removed.
Okay.
You could choose to appoint either one, both, or neither of us.
Okay.
So that would be, yeah, your choice on looking for both.
Immediately after approving.
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
Okay.
you could make,
Okay.
you could appoint us to the position the day after, so that there's not a vacancy. Or you could have someone else like lined up to fill that position the day after.
Okay.
And again, if you need more time to find someone, you could always table this, so it doesn't have to be passed within, we can do the 3 readings, but if you need a little more time to find someone to fill our positions, or to come up with a job description, or to negotiate anything, you can always table it for a meeting, or whatever you choose.
Yeah, I would suggest that we plan for an executive session after the next meeting so that we can work on and review job descriptions.
To be clear though, if if someone is appointed after that point, then it falls under the new rules, and they are appointed in, I believe it says perpetuity, essentially with the review process annually.
Correct, yes, they are appointed by the majority of council for an indefinite term, and they serve at the pleasure of council, so council can also remove them by a majority, and yes, I believe it called for an annual review. So we're just enacting the approved amendment just a little bit earlier than, if you would pass it, it would just be enacting that a little bit earlier than anticipated.
So on clarification, the HR process for the new person would just be through simple motions of council. It wouldn't require resolutions or ordinances.
Correct, yes, just a motion as you
Okay.
do to appoint any other individual.
Okay, we're good with the panel. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Now is the time for members of the public to address the council. As most of you know, you get 3 entire minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. If you would also sign in so we could get it correct, spelling and such in the record. And is that what you feel? Beautiful. So, anyone want to address? Good evening, Ms. Flair.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Jill Filliator at 402 West Culbertson Street. I need a follow-up comments from the last meeting, which left me a little bit perplexed, so I'm here to just seek clarification. Per my understanding, and again, the last meeting, I'm a little bit confused as to how we authorized a total redo of a room for over $50,000 and nobody in this room knew about it, and that it was legal and taken care of when we are in a fiscal emergency. It was discussed at the last meeting, and I'm just trying to understand as a citizen why we allowed that to occur, and what is the plan now that you are aware that it did occur? Are you then going to make that room for the benefit of the entire city people and use it as a break room? Just trying to figure out how that occurred, why it was considered legal, and why this entire room did not know anything about it. And that's what my concern is. As we move forward, and I hear that you're talking about doing appropriations and different things with council and might have to forgo that 3-read, the citizens of Fostoria would benefit from knowing that, I mean, I'm all for the council approval. That's what was voted in. But if we're going to do it earlier, don't you think the citizens need to be able to know about it instead of saying it needs to be an emergency read? Thank you for your time.
Elliot Schaefer, 722 West Center Street. My question is directed towards Mr. Cassidy. Why do you feel like this is an urgent matter that needs to be pushed through in regards to the city manager role?
The can's been kicked down the road far too long. It's time to focus on educating the voters. It's time for us to get behind this and get a city manager. You're purporting to be wanting to be the next mayor. So I hope you understand where I'm going with
I do.
this.
No, I'm just curious. And I think everybody else should know. I'm just wanted to know. It had been,
This
it had
is
been denied
structured. Now let me
twice.
finish. You brought it up.
Thank you.
This is structured. Do you know how a corporation is structured?
Absolutely.
You got a CEO, that would be your city manager, who's going to answer to a board of directors that would be city council.
Right.
And the board of directors answer to the stockholders.
Correct.
And what this does is it creates a lot more accountability. It puts more pressure on city council to know what the heck's going on. Maybe issues like spending money for furniture or things, maybe that wouldn't have happened if we had a city manager. We'll talk about that later. But anyhow, this creates an orderly fashion of running the city government. You put a city manager in to run this city, and you eliminate a tremendous amount of risk of just putting anybody in that decides to throw their hat in the ring
Absolutely.
to run for mayor. It would break my heart to see all the hard work, everything that Eric Keckler is going through to straighten this city out up to this point. And I hate to see it start moving backward because somebody turned it into amateur night.
Correct.
This isn't a job as mayor of this town to kind of learn as you go, number one. And this needs to be envisioned as you would a corporation that's around $50 million.
So do you feel that there is no one suitable in the city to actually run the government here?
I didn't say that.
Well, then, as a city manager, who would you look to? Do you have any ideas or any recommendations?
Would you tell me what you mean by that?
Well, if we're proposing to have a city manager role and to have a manager, are we looking at other city managers or other people that could potentially be filling that role if we're proposing this in an
We're
emergency?
not necessarily going to just look from within the confines of Fostoria.
Okay.
But that's not to say that there's not qualified people there. So I don't want that misunderstood or twisted around.
And then what would happen to the mayor role? Could you explain that to the people?
The mayor is going to be pretty much a symbolic. He's going to be a member of council. He's going around and shake hands, kiss babies, and do things that, the fun job that mayors like to do.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No, I got a question for you. You want to be mayor.
Yes, absolutely.
Why would you ask what the mayor is going to do under this? I would think you'd be doing your own.
Oh, I'm well aware, but I just wanted to make sure everyone else knew.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to make sure that the people representing us on council actually understand the repercussions of the actions that they're taking.
Oh, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, as council people, by going with the city manager, it's going to put more responsibility on our shoulders to make sure we know what's going on around here and make sure that we know the pulse of the community and also make sure that our city manager is doing the job he's getting paid to do. So,
Thank you for your insight.
anytime. I apologize for my brashness, but that's just the way I am.
Paul Allison, 118 and a half West Center Street, apartment 2. Okay, the first thing I want to say is I want to commend the Law and Ordinance Committee meeting for the 2 ordinances under old business again, which I requested that we get out of the book because they were no longer needed. I see they're up for 3rd reading tonight, and they should, I assume they will pass. Now, the second thing I want to say is I thought Councilperson Shaver made an excellent speech regarding emergency clauses. You would note that these 2 don't have any emergency clause in them because it's not needed. And of course, they will not be technically effective until 30 days after they're passed. But some ordinances, some resolutions don't require an emergency clause, but you could have suspended the rules at first reading and passed these ordinances anyway. They still wouldn't be effective until 30 days. But sometimes people don't understand the difference between suspending the rules and having an emergency clause in legislation. They're not necessarily 100% correct. The same, or they're not a quid pro quo for the other, necessarily. Now, thirdly, I'm here with my Records Commission. The Records Commission has a meeting scheduled for, as we have to under the ORC, for February 16, 2023, Thursday at 2 p.m. I think we will have some business from the auditor's office. I would like the mayor's safety service director to do something with the records in that record room, because if they would follow the schedules and seek to dispose of them, we could get a lot of records out of the records room that don't need to be kept any longer. And I would say the same thing for any other city entity that, let's see, how many are there? 15 or so? You have a schedule. You should be using it to dispose of obsolete records. And I would appreciate, and everybody should appreciate it if that were done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it as always. Good evening.
Dwayne Frankert, 1332 Fairway Drive, Fostoria. I'm here representing the condo association there. Somehow this summer, on where Fairway comes out onto Wedgwood, always was a yield sign, and a stop sign appeared. And we'd like to see that reversed and be a yield sign back there again. We don't see any reason for a stop sign in that spot. Probably better used someplace else in the city. But we'd like to see that stop sign come on and a yield sign go back up there. Thank you.
Much. So the Law and Ordinance Committee will look into that. Good evening again.
Good evening. There's nothing for me to sign, but Bill Sayre, 301 South Main Street, Fostoria. Just hearing same old stuff. City manager, we have voted down as voters just before. If you put it back on the ballot, I think that'll make 5 or 6 times. I'm not sure how many times it needs to be voted on and voted down before it just is being shoved down our throats and we just admit to, we're just trying to shove it down our throats. Very similar with that is we generally, the discussion online has been we don't want out-of-town influences. That is an issue. It is something that voters haven't wanted. Like I said, this 4 or 5 times. As far as, I came to all the meetings. I know you got the first reading tonight. I came to every single meeting as far as rental registration. I followed it closely online. Every single meeting that you had, every public comment that came up here, every single public, and it was a filled room, full. Every public comment said, we do not want this. This is a bad idea. And if you go online, thank you, sir. If you go online, it was very similar. I bet it was 9 out of 10 people said, this is a bad idea. It's not a good idea. So if you keep trying to push these things through after people give you their voice and tell you that they don't want these things, eventually people are going to say, do they really represent us? And I would question it myself if that's a scenario, but those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the public tonight? Good evening, Mr. Podak.
Good evening. Passed out a copy of some drinking water assessments for the city of Fostoria to everyone that were done the last time in 2019. I brought this up before, but my concern here is that I highlighted some things. I didn't give you the whole report. I gave you the pages that are pretty important, but page 4, about the third paragraph down, it says that they did a potential contamination sources, and they said that the inventory of those sources are limited to what the EPA staff was able to observe the day of their site visit. Now, I'm not real sure what site they were at. Maybe they were in town, but there's a whole map there of the source from the east branch of the Portage that goes down by to 224 and down by the landfill. And in 2019, the people that did this report couldn't even find the landfill. And I think everybody here in 2019 knew where the landfill was. But our EPA, who's supposed to be watching over our water, couldn't find it. I spoke with the head of the water from the state, from the EPA, and they're going to be redoing this assessment. It was in 19, so we can't blame it on COVID, because we know that they weren't out of their offices hardly at all during COVID. So my point to all of you here is that I know there's a bunch of money that came into the state from the federal government for the H2O program. It's time to look for alternative sources, extra sources, new sources for water in this city. Because I don't know if anybody's been out and looked at the reservoirs, but there's not much water in them. They're down quite a ways. I'd like to hear something from the water department as to how many days of water we got left, because they're down 12, 14 feet. And if for some reason, and it hasn't rained until now, hasn't rained all fall and, until this last week. I'm sure we're pumping like crazy to put water back in. But my big concern is that nobody's watching. They filled out a report, they put their names on it, they did it in 19, and they told us that there's 80% of the ground is farmland. You could have a spill on 224 that could cause some contamination. It could be bad sewer systems, septic tanks down through there. There's 7 pipelines that go across there, but they didn't see the landfill. Now, it hasn't contaminated anything to this point, but if you can't even find it and put it on the map, I don't know, you tell me. So just bringing that up.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Ben Nutter, Wind Waste Innovations, Sunny Farms Landfill. Just wanted to make sure that the council is aware, in 2019, in April of 2019, at the behest of the opposition group to Sunny Farms Landfill, Mr. Logston was instrumental in that. We accepted doing samples of outfalls of water from surface water of Sunny Farms Landfill. Mr. Bill McAllister accompanied our technicians, and we made split samples, and that information was made available to the health department and the Ohio EPA. And the point I'm making is that there was no contamination in that water. We have 4 outfalls at Sunny Farms Landfill. One of them goes to the Portage West Branch, and there was no contamination from Sunny Farms or any other sources at our outfall. So that's well documented. Happy to give you the reports. We did that, and in 2022, we've done them every year. They're tested twice a month, but there's never been a documented case where we're contaminating water off-site. The The only, what you could call impact on surface water has been turbidity, which is dirty water, just like you get in a river or creek when you get heavy rains. So, and we have protection systems in place at the facility to make sure that doesn't leak. So just thought that would be important information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joy Walters, 482 Hoover Drive. So I just have a couple of things. I align with this gentleman over here, with the city manager. This sounds, I'm not political, I don't understand a lot of how this all works, but it sounds like it's a backdoor way into achieving the city manager form of government, and it's a little confusing to me. We did have a vote, the public voted it down, so I'm just a little unsure as to how this is coming into play here with how you guys are getting rid of positions and gonna hire, and I don't, this is all new to me, so I'm confused. I would hope that there would be some kind of information to the public and some knowledge so that we have an understanding of what's going on and how this is gonna function, or if it's gonna function at all, I don't know. Secondly, I'm noticing here under new business, the registration of rental property, so that's back on the agenda. Will there be another public meeting for this?
Don't plan it.
So when
It's
the
not the
public...
same as it was before, so y'all.
What's that?
It's not the same thing as it was before. This is a reading advisory.
After the first reading tonight, you should request a copy of the language.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is new.
Okay. All right, that's all I have, thank you.
If you would like, I'll respond to your first question. And I'm gonna make it pretty easy to understand. Eric Keckler walked into a heck of a mess here. Does anybody want to disagree with that? This town was really going downhill. He spent 12 years reassembling and trying to put Fostoria back together. And the object of a city manager would be to prevent some whistle dick coming into this community in a matter of months or a year, put us back to where we were in financial emergency, disarray with the organization of the city itself. And say what you want about it, accuse me of whatever you want to. I'm not trying to ramrod something through that I don't have a lot of passion for. It's about time some of you other folks start studying the issues and understand what's going on. You're opposed to it. There's a number of people that are opposed to it that don't have a damn clue what it's about and what the ramifications are down the road if we don't move the city to the next level. I'm wasting my time on city council because of this BS, and I'm pretty well fed up with it. And if some of you out there are so much smarter than the rest of us, you can have my seat tonight because I'm getting pretty fed up. I don't want to see this community go back to where it was. And every time that you elect another mayor, you're running the risk of bringing in some hoo-ha that's going to just totally destroy what we've tried to gain back. This isn't a place for guys that don't really have much experience as far as city management or city government. This isn't the grounds to learn how to do it on a learn-as-you-go basis at this stage of the game. It's not going to be amateur night around here if you expect this city to actually survive. Now, you want to put up with the way we've been doing it forever and end up with the same results time after time after time? Go ahead. That's your decision. If you want to look at a Fostoria we can be proud of, where there's been a lot of progress made the last 12 years, then you need to go to the next level. If you're satisfied with running the risk of this community going further into the toilet, go ahead and just stand your ground.
It sounds what you're looking for is
Ms. Walter,
structure.
hang on. Ms. Walter, to answer your question as far as these positions go, the city passed 2 charter ordinances the last election to replace the elected law director and elected finance director with appointed or hired law director and finance director. And so this is another step towards what the citizens voted for, which was replacing the elected law director and finance director with the appointed law director and finance director. That passed the ballot issue last year.
Last May.
Last May. Mm-hmm. And so this is not council's doing with that. This is just the fulfillment of the election for that. So when you were talking about hiring and whatever, that's what that conversation was about.
I remember that.
And yes, and then the other part of the conversation is it sounds like there's been some talk among council people that they want to put the city manager back on the ballot again. They would not do it without it being, it has to be on the ballot. And so it would not be done by this body and forced on, it would be going back to the voters again, is the conversation that was being had.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other members of the public tonight? Thanks everyone for your comments and for being here as always. We move on with the whole business.
An ordinance to repeal sections 147.03 and 147.04 of the codified ordinances of the city of Fostoria entitled Enforcement of Parking Meter Rules, Maintenance and Collection of Coins respectively, and declaring emergency to exist.
That is the third reading of this ordinance.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Schaefer, second, I believe, Mr. Logston?
Yes.
Yep. Let's call roll, please.
Manal.
Yes.
Shaver.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Logston.
Yes.
Lake.
Yes.
And that becomes, now is it still 2022?
We have to adopt it yet.
We just did.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so that's then
I
number
feel
one,
like you
right?
asked me that last year. I think it's 2023 one.
Yeah, so that would be 2023. Dash one. Here, I looked up all the stuff for number 83, but there's no number 83. 2023-1. We've broken the ice. Congratulations. That good?
Yeah, I changed it. 2023.
The next one, if it passes also, the same thing. Speaking of the next one, whenever you are ready, my friend.
An ordinance to amend section 147.02 of the codified ordinances of the city of Fostoria, Ohio.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Move to adopt by Ms. Mendoza, second by Mr. Watson. Let's call the roll.
Manal.
Yes.
Shaver.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Logston.
Yes.
Lake.
Yes.
That becomes ordinance 2023-2. 2023-2. And that concludes all business. New business, please. When you are ready.
An ordinance granting consent to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio and authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Fostoria, Ohio, hereinafter referred to as the Local Public Agency, LPA, to enter into contracts with the Director of Transportation necessary to complete described pavement repair projects and declaring an emergency to exist.
And that is the first reading of that ordinance.
Can we open for discussion real quick?
Of course.
Do we have any information on this? Like, do we know anything
About the project.
about what this is, or?
Well, if you read the legislation, it says it's the section of Route 12 and Route 23 through town, so.
Well, yeah, but is it our annual paving projects? Is that what that is, or?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's just a section under the underpasses. I would assume somebody would be here next meeting who can explain it.
Gotcha.
We would hope.
Yeah, the mayor will know one. I was not given any details.
Okay.
Moving on.
We're
Oh,
still
sorry.
within the parameters of, we don't have to have this passed. It's not.
No, the deadline isn't until February 10th, so we can go through all 3 readings.
Next, please.
An ordinance enacting new chapter 1357 of the codified ordinances of the city of Fostoria, Ohio, entitled Registration of Rental Property.
That is the first reading of that. Next, please.
An ordinance enacting the approved charter amendment to Fostoria City Charter Article 5, Section 5.02, entitled Director of Finance, abolishing the elected position of Director of Finance and creating the position of Director of Finance to be appointed by the City of Fostoria City Council and declaring an emergency to exist.
That is the first reading of that ordinance. Next, please.
An ordinance enacting the approved charter amendment to Fostoria City Charter Article 5, Section 5.01, entitled Director of Law, abolishing the elected position of Director of Law and creating the position of Director of Law to be appointed by the City of Fostoria City Council and declaring an emergency to exist.
And that is the first reading of that ordinance. One more, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor on behalf of the City of Fostoria, Ohio to enter into an addendum to agreement regarding sanitary sewers with the County of Seneca, Ohio, and declaring an emergency to exist.
That is the first reading of that ordinance.
Move to suspend the three reading rule on three separate occasions.
Second.
Move to suspend the three reading rule by Mr. Lake, second by Mr. Cassidy. Let's call the roll.
Manal.
Yes.
Shaver.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Logsdon.
Yes.
Lake.
Yes.
The rule has been waived.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Move to adopt by Mr. Lake, second by Mr. Logsdon. Let's call the roll.
Manal.
Yes.
Shaver.
Yes.
Cassidy.
Yes.
Schaefer.
Yes.
Mendoza.
Yes.
Logsdon.
Yes.
Lake.
Yes.
And that becomes Resolution 2023-3. 2023-3. And that concludes new business.
Did we not vote on, we just read 5 ordinances, I think we only voted once, didn't we?
Yes.
You don't understand how it works?
We
Did
just,
you vote on every single one?
No, it has to be read 3 times before we vote on it.
unless it's,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
unless it's an
apologize.
emergency. No. Any call for executive session? Any miscellaneous?
Yeah, I have a couple of things.
Please.
I wanted to bring up with council and see if we could start to receive ordinances, resolutions, our packets, potentially the Friday before our council meetings. The reason I ask that is because today we received our packets at 2:28 p.m. and that gives us very little time. You know, I work a full-time job in addition to doing this. I know a lot of other folks on council also work a full-time job. And it just doesn't give us much time to prepare. I'd personally like the weekend to prepare. If I could have it on a Sunday or Saturday, could dedicate some time, you know, can send my kids off to play video games while I take a look and read through the ordinances and know, kind of figure out where we're going with things. And then to bring up any questions that we might have on Monday if before anything might come up, so we can have prior planning for this. So I don't know what we need to do, what changes need to happen, but if we can potentially work, I know other communities, they have requirements where agendas are set by Friday afternoons and they're sent to council on Friday afternoons. If we could do that, that would be preferred. So does anyone have any ideas on maybe how we can maybe overcome this?
I do know this has been discussed previously.
Yeah.
One of the main issues when it was discussed back in the day was the appropriations, when stuff comes down from the state, since we are fiscally controlled by the state, that those are not always as timely as we'd like them to be. Whether we could do everything else and add things in late or not is...
And I think we can maybe make a concession for that, that piece of it where, hey, since we are in emergency at this point in time, I'm assuming that once we're out of emergency that we won't be running into that that issue anymore, but for this time being and this temporarily for the next year or two, when we're working through this, maybe we say, hey, it's okay for that to come the day of if we have to, if that's what the state's going to do.
A lot of those appropriations too are going to stop or slow down because all of the supervisors are truly putting in POs early, and so their money is getting tied up early.
Okay.
Just the way it's supposed to be. So that was what we were running into, was that we would get an invoice and there was no PO and I had no money.
Gotcha.
And so we would need an emergency because I needed to get that invoice paid so it wasn't 30 days late. They are all on board on the POs first thing this year. And they understand why now, and they're very communicative with then and nows now. Even when we had a water main break,
Sure.
when it was freezing, you know, they contacted me immediately afterwards, told me how much it was gonna be, who was the vendor, and I was able to get POs in real quick. And then, so it was a lot of that stuff, and I think we've got that. I think everybody understands what's going on now.
Yeah.
And so they understand if we just communicate, we'll get this fixed. And hopefully we wouldn't have to come to you anymore for the appropriations.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna promise it's gonna end,
The
but I
processes
am
are
gonna
working,
say.
the processes should work that we put into place over the
Correct,
course of last
correct.
year.
We've worked very hard on
And so
educating everybody on why this part is so important that those POs get put in. Because they were just buying things and they were doing things and signing contracts, but
Sure.
yet they never tied up the money. And then somebody else thought there was money, and so then they would spend it, and so then we were trying to find it. So it's,
So we're
that's
not
why those
reliant.
appropriations we
Yeah,
need.
so we're not reliant on the appropriations anymore to hold us back.
I think
potentially.
this year we're gonna move in a really positive direction
Yeah.
because they understand now the process. It's
Okay.
much better.
In other words, the solution is to get out from under financial emergency.
Yeah.
Well,
But
you
not
would
to
still
get-
have to do it. I mean, even if this.
Perhaps, but not as
Oh,
often.
yeah. Because I mean, it's
Your
still.
problem right now is that the state is not available until the last minute for you to communicate with.
Correct. And yeah, and she waits till the last minute to turn it in.
Mm-hmm.
And she's waiting till I mean, she's so busy. So that is true. Because if I was able just to put it in, it would have been a lot sooner.
Right.
True.
It's called plan ahead.
Correct. Correct.
And as for the rest of the new legislation, I know Tammy has a lot on her plate, so instead of, waiting for Tammy to put it all together and send out the agendas and then possibly have new revised agendas, I can start sending to council just the actual ordinances and resolutions at the same time as I usually send them to Tammy.
That's helpful.
Which
That
is,
would be great.
I like what you did this last time.
typically the Thursday or Friday before,
Okay.
so I have them all done.
That'd be great.
We can do that too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's
The wonders of technology, adding a name to an email list. Very good. Other miscellany. Seeing none, I would love to get there.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Shaver, second by Mr. Madell. Let's call the roll.
Manel?
Yes.
Shaver?
Yes.
Cassidy?
Yep.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Logsdon?
Yes.
Layton?
Yes.
6:15.
Yes, sir. Put your name on.